He seems to be moving, but Hannity, you explained it really well tonight.
Did you see Shifty Schiff? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Great
Lying
show,
Schiff, Shifty Schiff. If I keep saying this, I'm about to say something that'll get me and you in trouble, and it'll be your fault for provoking it.
It's always your fault. Remember that.
Oh,
all right,
great.
All right, Sean, thanks so
show.
much. Great to see you. And good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. We have big news from coast to coast tonight, including exclusive information about that Florida school shooting that you will only hear on the Ingraham Angle. And it details how the Broward County Sheriff's Department may have mishandled the shooting and its aftermath. Plus, a Democrat's outrageous stunt to protect illegal immigrants that you will not believe. And it's what the Oakland mayor is doing to undermine law enforcement. But first, controversy and questions dogging the Broward County Sheriff's Office. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Who's Scott Israel, and what do we really know about him? Well, he's that colorful, brash, outspoken Broward County sheriff who's been speaking for law enforcement since the Valentine's Day massacre at Stoneham Douglas High School. Just 8 days after the shooting, before his department had even concluded its own investigation, Sheriff Israel found time to join a CNN town hall where he decided to join forces with the pro-gun control lobby.
18-year-olds should never have a rifle. An 18-year-old kid should not have a rifle. 18-year-old kid, they're not adults yet. They're in high school. These kids should not have a rifle. Automatic rifles should be outlawed forever. And anybody who says different, I don't know about other people, but Emma and I, we're calling BS on that.
I'm sorry, but he's such a blowhard. I mean, the sheriff had to know that automatic weapons that he referenced in that soundbite were banned by the feds years ago, and that the NRA does not advocate for legalizing them, Sheriff. You got to know that, or you shouldn't be in that job at all. But who the heck cares? Because it sounded good in front of that crowd, and it brought the audience to its feet. And just a few days later, Israel revealed the existence of videotape and a little piece of information that I thought was kind of important.
Well, what I saw was a deputy arrive at the west side of Building 12, take up a position, and he never went in.
Well, once that choice piece of information became public and more began to trickle out about the department's handling of at least 23 calls to the Cruz residence, Florida Governor Rick Scott and others asked for Sheriff Israel's resignation. Now, yesterday, the not camera-shy sheriff was asked about the calls for him to step down.
I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
I've worked. Yes, Jake. There's a lot of things we've done throughout this. You don't measure a person's leadership.
You don't measure a person's leadership. Well, yes, we do measure a person's leadership. Look, police in Broward wear body cameras, and we know there was security camera footage because authorities refused to publicly release it.
We're not going to disclose the video at this time, and we may never disclose the video, depending on the prosecution and the criminal case.
That seems really bogus to me and really weird. We may never release the video? We've already seen video of the kids leaving the building. And so why won't the sheriff release the video that would arguably be of the most interest to the public? Now, the video reveals how Officer Peterson and other deputies responded to this active shooter situation. It's kind of important, don't you think? Now, could it be that the video would be perhaps highly damaging to the sheriff's office and perhaps to the sheriff personally? And back to his appearance at that CNN town hall meeting. Why on earth did he choose to go on TV to make himself the center of this heated political debate? Is that really his role? Then he went on television the next week, just yesterday, to praise his own leadership as amazing. It's just bizarre. And by the way, this wasn't the first time Sheriff Israel ignited controversy for making himself the main attraction. Back in September of 2015, he took major heat for putting his big face on 5 taxpayer-financed Broward Sheriff's Office cars. Now, they were called... Well, just look at them. They were more about politics and policing, although it's a very good rap of that automobile. Now, the cars were to be assigned to members of Israel's community outreach team, which itself had been staffed by, it looks like, just the sheriff's campaign supporters. He got hammered for that as well. Well, just a few hours ago, the Ingraham angle received copies of internal emails from a source close to the Broward Sheriff's Office, which has since been confirmed by a second source this evening by one of our producers. Now, it urges all staff members to vigorously support Sheriff Israel. It reads in pertinent part, at the moment we find our agency up against a flurry of media allegations and a personal attack against our sheriff, Sheriff Israel. Sheriff Israel stood with us, and now we must stand with him. It's important that they know we stand as one. The focus should be on getting to the bottom of what happened leading up to the shooting, not some CYA deal for the sheriff. We need to know about the actions of law enforcement on the day of the shooting. It shouldn't be about saving Sheriff Israel's job, because that would be really pathetic. Now, the governor yesterday announced that Florida's Department of Law Enforcement will investigate Broward County's response to the shooting, with which Sheriff Israel said he would cooperate fully. Now, President Trump met with the governors today at the White House, and they discussed school safety and the aftermath of the Parkland shooting.
We have to take steps to harden our schools so that they're less vulnerable to attack. This includes allowing well-trained and certified school personnel to carry concealed firearms. At some point, you need volume.
Well, before this administration, in the end, embarks on some legislative response to the shooting, the president should request that Attorney General Sessions open his own federal investigation into this entire matter. And that means not only examine what happened on that horrible day, but also the FBI's failure to follow up on critical tips, the school's internal disciplinary records, and Broward's own interactions with Cruz and his family. No law-abiding American's Second Amendment rights should be diluted or compromised before we know exactly what happened from the moment that first distress call came into the Broward Sheriff's Office. And Sheriff Israel should spend a lot less time patting himself on the back and a lot more time being transparent with the public that demands answers. And that's the angle. Joining us now for reaction from San Antonio is Terry Lane, is a former FBI special agent. In Idaho, former LAPD detective Mark Furman, who's also a Fox News contributor, and in Tallahassee, Florida State Rep Randy Fine, who was one of the 73 Republican members of the House of Representatives who signed a letter urging Florida Governor Rick Scott to suspend Sheriff Israel. Well, to start our conversation, guys, I want to share another exclusive report with you tonight. Now, our sources near the Broward County Sheriff's Department are telling us that the deputies who arrived at the scene of the shooting were told not to enter the school unless their body cameras were turned on. And then we found out that the deputies did not have body cameras, so they did not enter the building or engage the shooter. So curiously, police also lost radio communications during the Parkland shooting. And our source claims that radio communication also went dead during the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting in 2017 that he also got a lot of criticism for. So I want to start with you, Representative Fine. Your reaction to this news that the deputies were told not to enter the building without body cams, which they lacked at the time. Your reaction?
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me on. Look, the more we learn about this situation, the more obvious it is that Sheriff Israel needs to resign or be removed immediately. That's why I signed that letter, and that's why the Florida House is moving this week to subpoena all records of Sheriff Israel, and we're going to be subpoenaing him and making him come up to Tallahassee to explain himself. What happened is a disgrace.
Mark, I want to go to you on this. The report that we got tonight that some of these radio communications are missing or weren't recorded, which I think are very important, are going to be critical as we try to determine what really happened in the aftermath here. What's your reaction to what we've learned, frankly, just today and tonight?
Well, it's pretty shocking that, one, it even occurred, and then, two, that you were able to find out any of this information. But what's interesting is Sheriff Israel is a character. He is a politician. Let's not forget that. But it really has nothing to do with the actions of the deputies at the scene. I don't care if they had radios. I don't care if they were on or off. They should have done exactly what they knew they had to do, regardless of who told them what to do over a radio. You ignore that, and you go in and you try to save the lives of those children, and you contact the shooter and kill him.
Terry, let's go to you. We're also learning that in the training of some of these police officers, they were taught a kind of deconflict the situation. So don't rush in, assess the situation first. And Scott Peterson's attorney is also kind of indicating that in some of his comments. We tried to get him on the show tonight. He would not join us, which is unfortunate. But if the police are being trained in a way that is not really helpful in this type of active shooter situation, that also is something we better find out fast.
Laura, that's against any protocol that I've been aware of since Columbine. All officers that I'm aware of are always taught to go in, don't be stupid, but go in tactically, but go in. Protect the innocents there. If they're being trained that way, I don't know why they would be trained that way.
Well, one of the reports we also heard, Rep. Fine, is that the deputy on site thought that apparently some of the shooting was taking place outside the building because, again, radio transmission that I think we may or may not have indicated that someone was injured on or near the football field. And so that's one of the reasons he stayed behind the cement barrier or car and was just 4 minutes went by and people were being shot one after the other in this building. So maybe it was just an honest mistake. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like we should have a lot of this video already publicly available.
Yeah, and if Sheriff Israel wasn't so busy bloviating on CNN town halls, we might have some of those answers. That's why Speaker Corcoran has asked us all to support him in getting Sheriff Israel either to resign or to be removed. That should happen immediately.
Mark Furman, there's a sound bite that I thought of you when I heard this yesterday. I know you know which one it is, but I'll just read it. I don't think we have it ready. But Jake Tapper basically asked him about the Broward County Sheriff's reaction and whether they had done things differently, would the shooting have happened or not. And Sheriff Israel said, listen, ifs and buts were candy and nuts, O.J. Simpson would still be in the record books. And Tapper's like, I don't know what that means. There's 17 people dead and a long list of things you could have done differently. So he has this kind of glib way of responding to questions, and I think you hit the nail on the head. He's more of a politician than someone to head the largest police department, county police department in the country of its type of stature, apparently. I didn't realize that it's the largest police department in the country. I don't even understand how it can be with New York and so forth, but of its type, I guess it's the largest.
Well, Laura, he seems awful impressed with himself, very flippant, almost like he doesn't see the gravity of exactly what happened, like it's an opportunity for somebody to know his first, last name and all of his career. But when he had to actually give up this information on the deputy that was sitting outside of that building number 12 listening to those gunshots, and I'm going to tell you right now, they knew full well that that shooting was going on inside of that building. And I will guarantee something for Deputy Peterson or ex-Deputy Peterson. He will relive that 4 minutes outside of that building for the rest of his life.
Well, that's for sure. And let's go to Terry on this. Speaking of the need for a real thorough investigation that's not tainted or questioned, could the FBI, or could the Justice Department, I should say, could they conduct a real investigation here, given the fact that the FBI clearly dropped the ball on these, on at least 2 of these tips, and the most recent one was really disturbing, involving Mrs. Deschamps, who was the woman who actually had him living in her house. So could the Justice Department really do this investigation?
I believe they can, Laura, but the fundamental problem here is the FBI has dropped the ball for the last several years. As I've mentioned to a number of my colleagues, and we've commented to each other on, the FBI no longer communicates with the community. When you contact the FBI anymore, even myself as a retired FBI agent, when I call the FBI office I used to work at, I get a recording. I don't speak to a human being. When I was an FBI agent, we answered the phone. We talked to the people in the community. We were there to provide safety to that community, and in order to do that, you have to be able to communicate with them. They have to be able to speak with you as an agent, a trained agent, not an analyst, not an intake specialist, but a special agent of the FBI. The FBI has tried to centralize all of their activity for so long now, they've lost touch with the communities that we're supposed to be providing safety to. That's the fundamental issue. Whether DOJ can investigate that and come up with a conclusion, I'm certain they can. But the FBI needs to look within itself, and it needs to start providing the services to the community.
Yeah, got a lot of problems. When law enforcement is finding out that this 19-year-old was obsessed with ISIS, had come into $25,000 buying all these guns, and had talked about shooting up a school and ripping animals apart. I mean, ding, ding, ding. Like, you know, all the warning bells are kind of going off there. I mean, I'm not an expert like you guys in this, but I mean, I guess in hindsight, you know, you have 20/20 hindsight here. But to me, this is just, Laura, this is a wild situation. Why don't you wrap it up?
Look, you know, when the FBI got that tip on Nicholas Cruz, spelled a very specific way, that he was a possible school shooter, all that FBI agent had to do was go to a federal database for gun registration and just find out if a Nicholas Cruz had purchased any weapons. Lo and behold, it would have popped up. He just bought an AR-15. He's in Parkland, Florida. Go door knock it.
Fantastic. Guys, we appreciate a great panel. And by the way, President Trump had really harsh words today for the first responders to the Florida school shooting. Hear that and the administration's reaction to the latest developments. White House spokesman Hogan Gidley next. And they include Delta and United Airlines. Meanwhile, President Trump criticized the first responders at the Parkland, Florida school shooting after reports surfaced that as many as 4 deputies took cover instead of pursuing the shooter.
The way they performed was, frankly, disgusting. They were listening to what was going on. You don't know until you test it, but I think I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. And I think most of the people in this room would have done that too. But the way they performed was really a disgrace.
Joining us now to react to the latest on the shooting is White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Hogan, great to have you in tonight. You worked a long day today. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
So I want to get into it with and now we find out that they're sending over around these system-wide emails to all the officers saying, support the sheriff, support the sheriff. Sounds like they're CYA mode over there. What is your take on it?
Well, you were right when you point out the point here is to find out what exactly happened. For him to use this time to go out on this political tour trying to bolster his own political agenda, which is a gun grab, which is so fascinating because Democrats in these times, as you know, go immediately to ending the Second Amendment and taking our guns. Let the government protect you. Well, we've seen what the government did at the FBI. We saw what it did at the local level. And now we saw deputies outside who were trained and had guns and didn't go in. So if it comes down to I get to protect myself with my own gun or I'm going to let the government do it, I'll take myself every day of the week.
It's very odd that the authorities saw ISIS flagged in one of these visits and was like was obsessed with ISIS. And I would think that a kid who's like amassing these weapons, obsessed with ISIS, has talked about school shooting. That's like that's kind of an easy one. It doesn't happen. You probably don't get all those factors together. Andy tortures animals. You don't get all those factors together very often.
It's so sad what was missed here and what could have been avoided. I mean, you know, the president had an incredible meeting with grieving parents and grieving children, students, people from around the area who were so just angry and frustrated and furious, but also just so sad at what happened. And now we know so much of this could have been prevented had any of these one flags been taken through the proper channels. This could have all been stopped, and that's what makes it so egregious.
What about my suggestion that the president ask Sessions to investigate this?
That's a very interesting suggestion. I mean, obviously, the president wants to get to the bottom of this.
Does he trust the Florida law enforcement to investigate this? The state, Rick Scott said they're going to do that today.
Well, I haven't spoken to him directly about that, but I will say that the DOJ obviously does have a role here if it so chooses.
The media, they're obsessed with the Republicans' relationship with the NRA. What is the president's view on these boycotts?
Well, I mean, look, this reminds me so much of this is a much more grievous issue. But I mean, remember when everyone came out against the Dixie Chicks? It was kind of their blowback for what they said about President Bush when they were on foreign soil.
I wrote a book called "Shut Up and Sing," which made a lot of headlines lately.
I heard about that book. Yeah. I heard about that. I know the author. But this is the type of thing that is ridiculous from the standpoint of we have a Second Amendment in this country. The president supports that Second Amendment, supports the NRA supports this president, and corporations can do what they want to, but to kowtow to pressure like this on something that is written in our Constitution that's afforded to every human American citizen is absolutely ridiculous.
But the president's in favor of some perhaps new restrictions, get rid of the bump stocks for sure. That's obvious for him. Perhaps still raising the age for a first-time purchase of a semi-auto rifle. Is he in favor of that or no?
Well, look, we had a meeting today. It's interesting you bring this up because other than the grievous families we talked about and the students that were so distraught, we also met with law enforcement officials. Then today at the White House, we have governors from across the country, Republicans and Democrats, dozens of them.
And what's the consensus? They want a ban on assault weapons? They want to raise the age of...
They didn't bring up the age raising one time in that meeting. And again, the president's listening to all the stakeholders here, and when you sit with the governors at the local level who could help stop some of these shootings, when they don't bring it up, that's very telling to him.
Well, if you go to war at 18, and you vote at 18, but you can't buy a rifle at 18. I guess, I mean, I'm not even making a comment on it one way or another, but we let people do a lot at 18. Maybe we should raise the age of everything to 21.
It's very inconsistent.
Maybe that's the question. What about the DACA decision? The Supreme Court decides not to, for now, take the case. What's the administration's reaction?
Well, look, let's just, on its face, the simplicity of it, and I think your viewers can understand this. Democrats say that the President Barack Obama was well within his rights. It wasn't unconstitutional. It wasn't unlawful. He has the power as president to establish DACA and start DACA. Well, play it out logically. If he has the power to start DACA, then doesn't this president have the power to stop DACA? It would make sense that if it's a presidential power. The problem is it's not. It's unconstitutional. It's unlawful. We're upset by the decision. Eventually, this has to get solved one way or the other.
You're going to go to the Ninth Circuit now because you wanted to hopscotch the Ninth Circuit. The court doesn't usually like that. So you're going to go back to the Ninth Circuit. You probably lose there. And you go back to the Supreme Court, and they might accept the case on certiorari at that point.
It's going to be a lot longer than we had anticipated.
Hogan, thanks for working the double duty for us tonight. I appreciate it.
Always.
All right,
always.
Good to see you. All right, thanks so much. And Oakland's mayor, speaking of thwarting federal law, said should go to jail to protect American citizens? No, just Oakland sanctuary city status. She did something so outrageous, you're not going to believe this. Actually, no, she might get her wish. Details next.
Ask your doctor about Toujeo.
Oakland, California's Democrat Mayor Libby Schaaf tweeted a warning over the weekend that she had learned about an upcoming Immigration Customs Enforcement operation. Schaaf said it was her duty to warn families, even though ICE's sweeps in California have targeted illegal immigrants with criminal records.
My priority is to keep this community safe. It is not my wish to panic people, but to ensure that they're prepared with information. I feel confident that my sharing this information, because I did not receive it through official channels, is legal, and frankly, it's my ethical obligation.
Oh, ethics she's talking about now. Now, the mayor has said she would go to jail to protect Oakland sanctuary status. raising the question, did she break the law with her warning? Let's ask our guest. Claude Arnold is the former special agent in charge for ICE in Los Angeles, and Joe Alioto Veronese, I'm getting that right, a former San Francisco police commissioner. Great to see both of you. All right, Joe, let's start with you, because Libby Schaaf is a very popular mayor. She's very colorful, and now she's saying that not only we're not going to cooperate with ICE. That's throughout the state. You're not cooperating with ICE in businesses and so forth, but she's going to send out these warnings, apparently, anytime she gets word of an impending raid or operation to target criminal aliens. So not just a farm worker who walks across the border, but aliens who are already adjudged criminals who have either not been showing up for their deportation hearings or have just absconded. So why are we protecting the criminals now, Joe?
Well, I think what you're seeing here is a breakdown between the local and the federal government and the relationship there. I don't think there's a whole lot of trust from the mayor all the way up to the president, or between the two, rather, that you're specifically targeting hardline criminals. And that's not, I mean, you read some of the headlines, and that's not really what we're seeing. But the fundamentals of what's going on here is that every law enforcement officer knows, and some of your previous guests have even this in the Florida incident. You're talking about the sheriff and his relationship with the public. The most fundamental tool that law enforcement has is that relationship with the public. And we have a very diverse community here in San Francisco and in Oakland, the Bay Area.
But what does that mean, Joe? I mean, honestly, when I hear a diverse community, that's fine. That's all well and good. But you also have criminals. You have criminals who are doing real damage and real harm to both legal immigrants and American citizens. You have people who are just working, and that, yeah, we get that. But the ICE maintains that they're targeting individuals who pose a threat to national security, public safety, border security, etc. We do not conduct sweeps or raids that target aliens indiscriminately. Claude, I want to get you in on this, and Joe, you can get back after the comment. Claude, I got to say, it's not like they're going through, 10 restaurants looking for, the dishwashers. They're looking for people who are real problems, and now Oakland says, no, guess what? We're going to warn them so they can go to the next community.
Yeah, you got it right, Laura. They're going after criminals. Almost all these targets. All these targets are people with criminal convictions or some sort of criminal history. So we're talking rapists, child molesters, drug dealers, gangbangers. I mean, ICE doesn't have the resources to go after the street vendor. This is something that's always alleged on the other side. Oh, they're arresting these street vendors. They don't have the time or the inclination to go after those people. And, by facilitating these people to escape ICE's grasp, all the city of Oakland is doing is endangering their own community, and I dare say their diverse part of their community, because that's where these people reside. So, the national recidivism rates, the rate at which people recommit crime, is about 57%. So we know that more than half of these people, when released, they're going to commit more crime. So if you're not releasing these people to ICE, and by the way, the county of San Francisco has not released someone to ICE since 2010, they're going back on the street to commit more crime against their communities.
Joe, your reaction?
Well, look, releasing people to ICE and enforcing immigration policy is frankly not the job of local law enforcement. And Claude, I read a couple articles that you've written. You acknowledge in the sex trafficking that the relationship between law enforcement and the community is absolutely essential. We cannot be scaring the community into hiding because, frankly, the evidence comes from them. That's how we solve crimes. It's not our job to do federal immigration law, and that's the bottom line.
Well, it's not solve crimes. I mean, we have people embedded in communities, the diverse communities, who are known criminals. They're trafficking drugs. They're human trafficking. They're pushing child porn. They're involved in all sorts of crimes that hurt people, Joe. And for this mayor to get up there and on her high horse and say, oh, I'm going to go to jail because I'm not going to, you know something, that might work in some parts of Northern California and other communities, but most Americans see this and they think we've gone totally off the rails. So now you exist to defend criminal aliens, not the people in those communities.
No, that's not necessarily true. I read what Libby Schaaf put out, and frankly, it was more of a broad, hey, the ICE is coming, but it's not necessarily targeting any specific neighborhood. We need these communities to cooperate with us. So if ICE has information about these rapists you're talking about, we don't tolerate that stuff in San Francisco.
Well,
Give us that information. Our local law enforcement will
do if you're releasing all of them from jail. You're not turning anyone over to ICE. If you're releasing all of them, you do tolerate it.
There's no way San Francisco tolerates rapists and these other criminals that you're talking about.
Well, apparently
they've been releasing every criminal alien since 2010, so they're
You're
tolerating
releasing them
something.
into the system, Joe. And again, we don't want to pigpile on you. You're not the one setting policy.
No,
but it is frustrating when when an immigration detainer is put on these individuals and they are simply released into the system to commit further crimes. That is you're right. That's a breakdown
ICE
in the system.
can go get a warrant and serve a lawful warrant on the sheriff's department.
So we're just going to make ICE do that every time? That's ridiculous. I mean, that shows such bad will on the part of Oakland and San Francisco is in the same. Like the whole state's in the same. I don't know why you guys think this is good for your state. I really don't. That I will not understand. Except you guys want, I guess, new voters or something. I just don't know why you think any of this is good. But it's a great conversation. And by the way, there's a new major development in the House Russia investigation, speaking of legal issues, but it doesn't seem to pack the punch that some Democrats promised. Two top insiders are going to debate whether the Democrats' FISA memo actually did more to confirm Republicans' version of events. Next. The latest in the Russia investigation, the FISA memo released by House Intel Democrats over the weekend has some key differences from the one released a few weeks ago by the Republicans. Democrats said the FISA warrant made only narrow use of that, well, phony Russian dossier. And Republicans claim there would have been no warrant without it. The two sides also disagree whether the FBI informed the court of the political origins of the document, which was paid for by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. So who's telling the truth? Let's debate it with Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, a member of the House Judiciary Committee, and Felipe Reyes, who is the former senior advisor, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Don't laugh.
Different pronunciation every
time.
Well,
I like to keep you guessing. Let's talk about what this memo said. I mean, the Democrats were kind of celebrating over the weekend, Congressman Gaetz. They say that, look, it really wasn't the reason this Russian investigation began. They were surveilling Carter Page for some time. Then the Papadopoulos information came up in the summer of 2016. So the Republicans are, making a mountain out of a molehill here.
What's most fascinating, Laura, is what's not in the Democratic memo. The fundamental premise of our argument is that cash at the Democratic National Committee was convertible into a government-sponsored warrant to spy on American citizens. And surprisingly, the Democratic memo does not say Hillary Clinton's name once, and it doesn't mention the DNC once. And so I think it's pretty evident that there are a lot of the Republican claims that are actually bolstered by the Democratic memo, including the fact that the dossier was used to get this warrant and that a Yahoo News article planted by Christopher Steele was also served as a validating basis for the fake dossier. It's shameful.
Felipe?
Well, Lori, I've learned the last couple of months that if I'm going to play poker with someone, there are four people I want to play with. Donald Trump, Congressman Gaetz, Jim Jordan, you started this, and Devin Nunes, because these guys wear their fear on their sleeve. When they yell memo, when they introduce legislation, it means they know what's coming. Literally, they probably have a heads up, but they know that there's a problem. In this case, I'll let you introduce your legislation. The previous case, when you called for Special Counsel Mueller to be fired, that was in November. Mueller was appointed in May. 6 months go by. Why do you wait for that? I'll tell you why he waited. Because 5 days before his legislation, Paul Manafort was indicted. 5 days before the legislation, the indictment, Mike Flynn was rumored to be talking to Mueller.
The same one that Comey said didn't lie when he was interviewed by.
But I think the pattern here is we see memos coming out of the sky and legislation coming out of the sky when the Republican the House Republicans are doing Donald Trump's bidding.
Well, we'll play poker any time, but we hold the aces in that poker game when you've got a circumstance where Mueller's team has strong evidence of bias, and still to this day, not a single piece of evidence that there was any collusion. I mean, look, when you guys lost this campaign, you had to blame the Russians. elections. You had to blame Bernie Sanders. I think at one point you guys have blamed Jill Stein. I mean, at what point does the Hillary Clinton team say we just lost because we had a worse candidate and Donald Trump had the more compelling message?
Guys, I want to play.
At what point do you say I am concerned about Russia meddling in our election?
I am concerned about Russia meddling.
I
am concerned about Russia meddling in elections all over the world. They do it everywhere. But if you guys ran such a...
You took an oath to preserve and protect...
What did Obama? What did Obama? Wait, hold on. It's fun watching you two, but
why do you allow Russia?
Was your campaign so bad that you got beat by 100 Russian trolls? You guys were spending millions of dollars every day, and you're saying 100 Russian trolls are what beat you guys?
Again, I'm hearing the Republicans say the Russians just...
Okay, I'm glad Democrats finally care about the Russians, because last time I checked, they were trying to like do reset and the button, and we were smiling with Putin at conferences and so forth. Carter Page, who obviously was the target of the surveillance, I interviewed him a few weeks back, and I asked him specifically about this guy Igor Sechin, who's mentioned in the Democrats' memo as someone the Steele dossier claimed he met with. I asked him about that specific individual. Let's watch.
So
Yes,
I gave a speech, and there was one senior government official who spoke after me. He was walking out of the building after he gave his speech, and we had a very brief conversation for less than 10 seconds.
Was that Igor Sechin?
No, I've never met Sechin in my life.
You're saying tonight that you have never met Igor, I always forget his name, Sechin. You've never met him?
I've never met him in my entire life.
Well, look,
I think in the spirit of bipartisan comedy, I think we could say that Carter Page is the dumbest person in this entire scandal.
If that's a characteristic of not being able to speak on television, whatever, an empty TV sets all over.
But he is the basis. His trip in July 2016 and his work going back as far as 2013, 2014 is the basis for the FBI looking at him.
So you're comfortable with the fact that in the end that this memo, the FISA warrant, did not include a reference to Hillary Clinton?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all,
really quick, I'm going to go black.
It said that it came from Oppo sources.
Wouldn't have bothered you if you were the target of this investigation. Wouldn't have bothered you. Would have bothered me.
Friends don't give the FBI information on friends. It always comes from people.
If you were the target, you wouldn't like that. I can tell you that.
I wouldn't be the target because I didn't collude or obstruct Russia.
Oh yeah, Carter. One look at Carter Page.
How are you prejudging that?
Guys, stop. Philippe, he can't be both dumb and kind of doing the super secret spy network.
Oh, sure, he could be a bad spy, which is how he got caught.
This is how
Donald Trump Jr. isn't the sharpest knife in the drawer either.
Okay, well, then what am I going to say about Hillary Clinton if the dumb person ends up winning the election? I don't know what to say about your people. How the left's PC police boys may have spoiled an Olympian's golden moment and an A-list movie star's hopeful prayer. Dangers of tweeting when the PC police are lurking about. First, this adorable selfie was taken by U.S. Olympic bobsledder and silver medalist Lauren Gibbs with first daughter Ivanka Trump and White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Gibbs tweeted out, "It's important to remember that we don't have to agree on everything to get along. Be civil to each other, and enjoy each other's company. It was a pleasure to meet you both." Seems like a perfectly innocent expression of the Olympic spirit, right? Well, not to the left. They went ballistic over Gibbs fraternizing with the enemy. Some of the mean tweets. "Congratulations, you just got used for propaganda." Gibbs replied gracefully but firmly, "I'm not falling for anything, but being nasty to them would not solve the issue. And don't get me wrong, there are many issues." Well, Lauren Gibbs was eventually bullied into deleting the picture from her Twitter feed. Can't Americans celebrate Team USA's victories together? This is insane. And now, even prayer is not safe from social media scorn. After learning of director Kevin Smith's massive heart attack the other day, actor Chris Pratt tweeted, "Kevin, we don't know each other too good, but I've loved you since Clerks, and I'm praying my blank off for you because I believe in the healing power of prayer. Can you please pray with me, people?" An avalanche of ridicule and hatred followed. One person tweeted, "Prayer does nothing. Only doctors and nurses, and how healthy he is will save Smith." Another said, "That's cool and everything, but doctors and nurses save lives, not prayer." Well, those comments were overwhelmed, though, by those supporting Pratt's sentiments. Now, man, it never ceases to amaze me how often the left will leap at any excuse to attack what society held sacred not so long ago. We'll be right back.
Broward County Sheriff has a history of not acting during mass shootings. In the wake of the Parkland, Florida shooting earlier this month, numerous students and lawmakers have called on Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel to resign over his inaction as leader of the law enforcement department. According to the Daily Caller, Israel has a history of failure when it comes to responding to crisis situations, including a 2017 shooting at the Fort Lauderdale airport. A 99-page report drafted by department officials admitted the agency mishandled that shooting, adding that the department failed to take control of the shooting area, where chaos ensued and the suspect killed 5 people and injured 6 others. During the events, the absence of a clearly defined incident command created unnecessary entanglements and unclear responsibilities, the report stated, though Israel said during an interview that everything was done excellently. And now, his alleged failure in handling this latest shooting has both students and lawmakers outraged. Many are calling on Florida Governor Rick Scott to remove Israel from his position. Florida House Speaker Richard Corcoran went so far as to send a letter to Scott urging Israel's suspension, with State Representative Bill Hager echoing those sentiments just a day earlier when he cited neglect of duty and incompetence from Israel. In addition, some survivors of the fatal shooting that left 17 dead told Fox News that the sheriff's time in the department must come to an end. He failed to act on so many different levels and himself, he is responsible for this massive failure, student Kyle Kashev said. It could have been easily stopped both by the FBI and the sheriff's department had they acted. The accusation comes amid reports that the sheriff's office knew suspected gunman Nikolai's Cruz was unstable and had been called to his home on multiple different occasions, yet did nothing. The sheriff was fully aware of the threat this individual presented to his community and chose to ignore it, Hager stated. Further reports have also claimed Broward Sheriff's deputies waited outside the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School building during the shooting, instead of rushing in as Cruz allegedly went on his rampage. The allegations came out not long after Deputy Scott Peterson, who was assigned to protect the school, resigned due to his particular failure to confront the gunman. Though Scott could immediately remove Israel from his position, he stated that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement would instead launch an investigation into the matter. Israel said he would fully cooperate with the investigation. There must be an independent investigation, Scott said. And that is why I asked the FD Commissioner to immediately start this process. What do you think? Scroll down to comment below.